Yo, what's going on, guys? It's me, KingStix, going to be showing you how to play Karthus consistently and carry your games. Speaking of consistently, Karthus has constantly been in the top 5 strongest jungle champions for roughly a year and a half, and he is still going strong. He's one of the few power farm junglers that performs well in low elo as well in high elo, as long as you get the hang of using his Qs, of course. Even if the enemy jungler is an early game jungler like this enemy Lee Sin and they get a lot of kills in the early game, I'm going to be showing you how you can carry and pop off still regardless, outscale them, and win the game without falling behind or dying. The correct rune set to run is Dark Harvest, Cheap Shot, Eyeball Collection, and Ravenous Hunter. I do not recommend going Ultimate Hunter. It will leave you much lower on HP in the early game and make 1v1s much more difficult. For your secondary tree, go Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace. For your 3 side runes, take 2 Adaptive Force and 1 Armor. If you're playing against an AP jungler like Elise or Echo, you can go for the Magic Resist instead. In general though, going for the Armor is better since the majority of the monster camps do physical damage. The only one that does magical damage is Gromp. The first thing you need to know about playing Karthus is you need to kite your camps. Your Q will be on a lower cooldown than your auto attacks are. This is going to lead you to starting the camp out with a Q, auto attack, QQ, auto attack, QQ, auto attack. Otherwise, you won't be using your Q quite as fast. If you are going to be kiting the camp out farther, then you can get away with doing Q, auto attack, Q, auto attack, but in general, the highest damage you can do is Q, auto attack, QQ, auto attack to the monster camps. Try not to leave your Eon for too long, it sucks you dry on mana. Try to flick it on and off to help you clear camps. It's especially helpful against AoE camps. Against things like Gromp, red buff, or blue buff, it's not as helpful, so don't just leave it on the whole time. Only use it to flick it on and off when it will be helpful. Take a second point in Q at level 3, it'll speed up your clears, but don't look for a gank if you don't have your W. Make sure that when you're fighting camps, you kite them around. Being a ranged champion, it's a big advantage to be able to move away from them, hit them with Qs and auto attacks. If you don't do this, you'll be taking way more damage, you'll be low health and susceptible to dying in your own jungle. As long as you're kiting the camps properly, you'll be high health and hard to kill. Against the golem camp, try to block off the big one with the medium sized one to take minimum damage. If you have trouble kiting your camps, consider playing a easier champion or just going into the practice tool to farm. Remember, the big one does do the most damage out of any monster in your jungle, so you want to try to minimize how many times that one hits you. Assuming you've cleared effectively and you got a leash, you should be able to finish all your camps before the 3-minute 15-second mark, so you should be able to show up at the first Scuttle Crab. Here, Lee Sin is on his way and my mid laner is dead, so I can't really go for it. If my mid laner was there, I would feel confident in soloing Lee Sin since I'm a level up on him and I know the matchup pretty well. In this case though, since I have no mid priority and no top priority, I'm going to go ahead and just back. Since Fiora is full HP, I know we can't get the kill since Camille's almost dead, plus Lee Sin's in the area, so that would be a very bad decision. Typically in your first clear on Karthus, you're only going to gank at the very end of it, so in this case it would have been Fiora or maybe the enemy mid laner or just getting the Scuttle Crab. Since none of those were options, we're just going to be disciplined, reset, and start back up our clear. As you can see, the start of our clear is already back up with the Gromp, and after I finish the Gromp, my wolves will be up as well. And if I feel like it, I can go for this Scuttle Crab since I see Lee Sin is mid and I know he hasn't gone for it yet. Since I have backed and bought in items, I'm pretty confident I can solo him. I have my double refill. I still have my red buff, which he doesn't have his anymore. And I also have my blue smite. So here I was waiting for him to come in on it, but instead it looks like he went somewhere else or recalled. So we're just going to start it up and then keep clearing. Once you are level 6, keep close tabs on what the enemy HP looks like. Here their bot lane's full HP and I see Fiora's low, so I'm going to keeping tabs on her. I'm going to wait until she uses her counter attack, that way I don't whiff my ult. So I'm going to wait until I see Camille taking some damage so I know she's starting a dive or something like that. Once you're level 6 on Karthus, you're basically Shen. You need to keep track of what's happening. I see Camille go in. Unfortunately, as I start my ult, Camille finishes her off anyways. That'll actually happen more often than you think when you're playing Karthus jungle. There's a little bit of luck to it, but it's better to use it than not to have used it at all, because if you didn't use it, you can end up in weird situations, and in general, you have to pull the trigger. Just because the bullet doesn't quite finish it, or just because your teammate pinches it, it was still the right move to make. And then of course, you're going to proceed to farming. That's pretty much all Karthus does. Most enemy junglers will be out ganking you in the early game, so you need to be ping, so you need to pay attention to where they are on the minimap. Here as I'm finishing up golems, I see Lee Sin on the minimap mid/bot side, so I know I can push into his blue and take it. I only see him with the red buff, so there's a good chance the blue buff is still up, and I should be able to wipe this all before he gets here. On Karthus, power farming your own jungle usually isn't enough, especially if the enemy jungler is getting fed like this Lee Sin has been doing this game. If the enemy jungler is getting ahead, if they're leaving their jungle to gank your lanes, if you don't have any gank options because of the way the lanes look, the enemy's full HP, your laner's low, then you need to find options to start invading the enemy's jungle after you're done clearing your own. So here, Lee Sin is now bot lane. Meanwhile, I just scraped 3 of his camps. So is he ahead? Yes. But am I ahead? Yes, and the thing is, I scale harder and I have more consistent opportunities to impact the game with my R, since I can use it at any point when it's off a cooldown. After finishing my full clear and taking his camps, as you can see, my full clear is starting back up on the Gromp spawn, then my wolves will come back up, then raptors, golems, then his camps, etc. Once you have your full jungle item on Karthus, you become a pretty big threat. You're very difficult to 1v1, and as you can see, I have 200 shutdown gold on me, and so does Lee Sin. So even though he has 4 kills, we are still in it neck and neck. And the difference is I haven't been wasting time ganking, which can easily go wrong or just be a waste of my time. Imagine if any of his ganks didn't turn out, I would have a sizable advantage over him. It's just the way this played out. We are neck and neck. The enemy bot lane is missing, and I'm looking for a gank since I'm full HP and I have my full jungle item. I'm a higher level, have more items, and MF is missing some health. She foolishly tries to fight me. I smack her with a red buff auto, hit her with my wall of pain, and start blasting her with my Qs after I drop my blue smite. She can't really dodge it since she's so slow and drops ult. I peek back around, finish her off. Nautilus tries to get on me, so I hug the wall, so when his Q comes off a cooldown, it'll be difficult for him to land it. And watch this Ravenous Hunter healing. I hit Nautilus with a few Qs, and I'm getting back a solid amount of HP to where he really had no kill pressure. If I didn't have Ravenous Hunter there, I'm pretty sure his Riptide would have killed me. I saw Lee Sin in the area, which is why I'm being so tentative here on the wolf camp. I'm just trying to heal up on it, and I was really sure he was going to come and try to kill me. He ends up not coming though, which was surprising, so I can continue my clear or set up a back. Ravenous Hunter heals me up pretty well. I proceed to clear my jungle, and I see Lee Sin bot lane, so I want to invade his jungle and get his Gromp and wolves. I drop ulti, but I don't quite get the kill. In general though, it's not worth to use just for Dark Harvest. Here as I'm taking his wolves, I pull it away from the wall just in case he comes. My biggest regret here was not using my W on him sooner. Since he had boots and mobility, it allowed him to get on top of me really fast. I drop my W, start blasting with Q's point blank range. Against melee champions, it's really easy to use your Qs on them because if they auto attack you, the way it places them, you can easily set up a Q in between you and them to where if they don't hit you, then they lose from taking your E damage, and if they do hit you, they soak a Q for free. If you're interested in the full build, go back to the start of the video and I'll have the runes, level order, and my items that I built in this game. Once you are level 3 and up, you can take Blue and Gromp at the same time pretty comfortably. You will take a little bit of damage. If you don't have Ravenous Hunter, I wouldn't recommend it. If you go Ultimate Hunter, you'll take a fair amount of damage, especially this early in the game. In this case, I would plan on ganking bot anyways because MF was shoving up. I had a Scuttle to heal off of and a potential fruit. I dropped the Wall of Pain right on her. Make sure you actually hit them with it, because if you land it on them, it shreds a bunch of their magic resist. So if you're not landing it, you're just missing out on a bunch of damage. I'm getting spam pinged here by my teammates. Make sure you have your Eon in these fights. Blue smite who you're trying to hit with your Q, that way you can land it, and then just center it on your target. Here I land 2 Qs on MF and it pretty much just kills her. As enemies try to juke around your E, they die anyways. Nautilus is over juking. It's really frustrating when your teammates are just dropping fat bombs on your head like that. Whenever that happens, just mute them. Typing at them or typing to them won't help in any way. It's kind of like if a monkey at the zoo is going ooga booga at you, like you doing it back to them or you trying to communicate isn't going to do anything. So just drop the mute, don't type, and that's your best way for winning. I mentioned this in particular because as Karthus, your early game presence isn't very big in terms of ganking for the most part, so you'll have a lot of teammates who are aggravated or they're looking to lash out. So the worst possible thing you can do is type. Just drop the mutes and carry your team. After you have your full jungle item on Karthus, you want to get your sorcerer shoes, and then at that point you normally go into an Oblivion Orb for the extra flat magic pen to maximize your ultimate's damage against squishies or people who aren't building magic resist. It's because of this reason that on Karthus you typically don't want to pick him if your team is already AP heavy, because if the enemy team rushes magic resist items, you won't be getting much value out of Karthus' most optimal build, which is once again the jungle item into sorcerer shoes, into oblivion orb, into usually a Rabadon or a void staff at that point. It's usually best to pick up a dark seal along the way because you can usually get 10 stacks on it, get into Mejai's. It's also a very cost effective item. The enemies still have a considerable lead and my teammates rush dragon. Instead, I go to Lee Sin's jungle and drop my ulti when the fight breaks out. We pick up a kill assist and actually help our team win that fight. The reason why I opted to go into Lee Sin's jungle instead when I saw him near dragon was I don't want to fight a fight I think we're gonna lose. If I was in that situation, the enemies might have played it differently, or perhaps I would have gotten caught out. At the end of the day, me landing a good ultimate and wiping all of his camps is a better option. If enemies are pushed up and if your teammate isn't almost dead, it's a solid gank. Just make sure you land your W first, hit him with that blue smite, toggle on your E, and pound them down. If they're constantly dodging your Q, slow down how fast you're using it, and really take your aim and pressure them with your auto attacks and E. Your E and auto attacks are guaranteed, so if you can't land your Q and you have the enemy cut off, take your time, blue smite them, and then start blasting them with the Qs. I know I can kill Lux because I'm pretty powerful and I have a lot of magic pen. She has 0 MR, so I bait her into fighting me by going after her pink ward. Drop a Q on her, she starts to run. This is why it's best to bring the enemies to you on Karthus since his chase downs are kind of crap. As she's running away, I tag her with my wall, which is going to allow me to catch up to her. I'm saving my flash to dodge her snare, however, so I want to try to run her down and make her uncomfortable. Once she's very uncomfortable, I then take advantage of my power, flash, E on top of her, and wreck her. After she flashes, I do blue smite her because I wanted to have some way of staying on top of her. Whether she had flash or not though, I was going to use blue smite. That way I could stay on top of her with my E and land Qs much easier. If you haven't landed your W or blue smite, if your opponent is ranged, landing Qs is very difficult and is only possible if they allow it. The only time you can land Qs consistently on a target if they're not slowed is if they are melee, or in general if somebody is autoing you, whether they're ranged or melee. If they're not willing to cancel an auto attack against a well-played Karthus Q, then it will land, because every time you go to auto attack, it holds your champion still for just a moment. So if Karthus times that, centers it, if someone is completely unwilling to cancel the auto, they will soak the Q. If the enemy jungler's dead, try to look for opportunities to go in their jungle. Every camp you can soak on Karthus is huge. He's an extremely level-based champion and he scales super hard. Lux is out of position, I drop the wall of pain, smack her with a Q, and kill her with just landing 2 alone and a flicker of my E. Make sure you flicker your E on and off. Don't just leave it on or you'll suck yourself dry super fast. That's never fun to do. Anyways, the enemies are trying to defend on their turrets. In these situations, never be the first one to get engaged on. For example, I'm not going to run up and melee them. On Karthus, you're more of a backline player unless your team comp is really wonky, and then sometimes you have to be the first one to die. But in general, you don't want to be the one in front. So even though Nautilus ulted me there, I had Maokai step in front of me, I ran back, and I was still in a good position. But in general, you never want to be necessarily the first one to die on Karthus unless your team doesn't have a tank. If your team does have a tank, you want to stay alive, normally for as long as possible, so the enemy team can get as low as possible. That way when you drop your ult, you'll wipe everything, or at the very least, you'll get off a few extra Qs, which do absolute ridiculous damage. In this case, I'm in a bit of a weird situation. I'm just greeting out here. I could back, I could go do my whole blue side jungle. I didn't even see Lee Sin on the minimap, and then I end up getting myself killed. This is a perfect example of how not to play Karthus there. There's no reason to be up trying to kill people underneath their turrets. In the mid game, you should only be farming ever or playing around your teammates. You're not Evelyn, and you're certainly not Pyke mid. You're not going to be finding random assassin kills, so definitely don't do that. When you use your ulti in team fights, you don't want to use it early because you don't want to risk the enemies canceling it. If they hit you with a hard CC other than a snare, it will cancel your ult, putting it on a full cooldown. Here, I don't immediately use it to try to kill the Lee Sin. I back up and I wait to get a good position. I nick him with some damage, I completely back off, and then I drop the ult. Never be in too big of a hurry to use your ultimate on Karthus if you are actually in the fight. Lee Sin didn't have ult, and once again, snares don't cancel your ult as Karthus, and Nautilus was dead, so I wasn't worried about the Lux. They had no way to cancel my ult at that point. Otherwise, I might have backed up even further. If you're in your own jungle and there's no one near you, it's different, but if the enemies can see you, and if they have an option to CC you, you'll put yourself in a really bad spot. So always remember that. I see a lot of bad Karthus players too eager to drop ulti, when in reality, if you're full HP and the enemies are low, you can pressure them with your W and Qs, land one Q and you'll scrape half their HP. In team fights, as long as you're not the first person to get engaged on, you can lob in huge damage from the back line, really throwing the enemies off their game. Here they engage on the 𝐒𝐿𝐂𝐂𝐋, I drop my wall of pain getting slows, I land a few good Qs, and I'll tell you right now, if you are throwing Qs from the back line, it is much easier to land them than when people are all dancing around you and you're the one getting hit. If they're trying to kill your teammates as fast as possible before you can kill them, oftentimes they won't be canceling their auto attacks and they won't be in the right state of mind to dodge your Qs. And I'm still alive here in this situation, which is perfect. Once again, the only time where you kind of want to die first on Karthus is if your team doesn't have a tank and that is your only option. It's more of a last resort option, kind of like kamikazing. You don't do it unless you absolutely have to, because in general, the value you get out of it is low unless it is a very specific situation. I really can't stress that enough. I see Karthus players all the time just stepping up way too far. They'll throw away Dark Seal stacks, they'll throw away Mejia stacks, and they'll just give away a lot of pressure in general. As long as you're alive on Karthus, one well-placed Q will do over half the HP of the enemy AD carry as long as they don't have any MR items. Once again, we have a bunch of flat magic penetration. Karthus in this game was a perfect pick. As you can see, my team has lots of AD. Only me and 𝐒𝐿𝐂𝐂𝐋 are AP, and he is the support. So the odds of the enemy team building magic resist in the earlier mid game is very slim, allowing Karthus to do maximum damage. Never pick Karthus if your team is already heavy AP. Your flat magic penetration won't be doing anything, and he is a non-optimal champion for that situation. If somebody hourglasses, it's very easy for you to land your Q on them. Just listen to the sound of the hourglass and then throw your Q towards the last quarter second of the hourglass, and it's a really easy kill. Just place it over the center of them. If they don't have flash, there's absolutely no way they're going to survive. They are half health or below because of your Dark Harvest stack. It looks impressive when you do it, but it's actually super easy. Just listen to the Zhonya's. It's a big reason why I don't recommend listening to music while you play. The enemies are on Baron right here, but I'm not going to rotate. Karthus is a very slow moving champion, and by the time I get to that fight, the enemies might just run away, or they could probably have my teammates killed by then. So it's better to take the guaranteed turret and perhaps inhibitor as well, rather than guaranteeing myself nothing. As Nautilus runs up, I'm not too afraid of him. I actually want him to run into me. I wasted my W, just put it right on top of them. It's an insta slow and magic resist shredder. Once they are in melee, just put the Q in between you and them, centering it slightly towards yourself if you feel like they're going to chase, or slightly more towards them if you feel like they're going to run away. As you can see with my Ravenous Hunter here and with my scripts, I am healing like an absolute madman. I just fought basically 1v3, got 2 and got away. Not too shabby. Once again, if I had Ultimate Hunter, I probably would have died there because I wouldn't have had the healing on the Nautilus and Lee Sin. I can back into the jungle and get lots of my health back. Once again, if you have Ultimate Hunter, it doesn't work like this, and you will have to back more, and you won't be able to do 1v2s or 1v1s nearly as well. If you have the opportunity, Karthus takes dragons super fast. Just kite it out. That way the enemies can't steal it. The biggest thing about Karthus is you don't want to do dragons if you don't know where the enemies are, because Karthus is very slow. It's hard for him to get away. If the enemies have any good gap closers, you're just going to die. So if the enemy jungler's dead, or if you know where everyone is on the map, you can go ahead and solo it even early on in the game at level 4 or 5. As long as you have Ravenous Hunter, you'll be able to heal off of it. If you go Ultimate Hunter, I wouldn't recommend trying to solo dragons on Karthus until you're at least level 5, and even then you'll be taking a lot of damage. So take Ravenous Hunter, it's the best. You can solo dragons at level 4, level 5, and get some impact. In this game, Lee Sin was so fed early on with 3 or 4 kills that me soloing dragons wasn't realistic, and it was better for me to just farm up his jungle every time I saw him somewhere else on the map. It allows you to build up consistent leads and to carry the games while minimizing your risk. Final thing I want to retouch on is in team fights, make sure you're not the first person to get engaged on. It'll allow you to get off a really easy W once the enemy's gap closers are down, get off a few good Qs, and then you can back out of the fight, out of harm's way, and finish off the enemies with your ultimate. Here, I did it to kill the Nautilus. I didn't want him to get away. Plus, it's not like I was going to chase down the Lux regardless. So I could just drop my ulti. It helps us kill the Fiora and Lee Sin, and then we can shove it in. Don't be a kamikaze Karthus unless it is absolutely necessary. Let your team be the meat shield. Each one of your Qs is going to be doing around 800 damage late game if it hits one person. So there's really no reason to throw yourself into a meat grinder 9 out of 10 times. That's going to wrap up this Karthus jungle guide for Season 10 League of Legends. He's a really strong jungle champion, and if your team needs an AP jungler, and if you want to play something that is very safe, very consistent, and is good throughout the game, I highly recommend Karthus. He is an amazing pick, and I think he'll remain that way for a long time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps out immensely. My name is KingStix. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.